coming up the next couple of weeks with our series. Next week, we're going to talk about what AI means for your work, family, and faith. And Alicia Barinwald, who works for Microsoft and helps develop some of the programs that are related to AI and some of those things, is a part of our Wooddale Edina campus, and she's going to be sharing with us next week in our series of Solomon Got a Smartphone, which if you were here Sunday, it was fascinating just to hear Pastor Kyle's not only message about stepping into that, but also last Sunday night, when Lindsay was here with us. And Lindsay also attends our Edina campus and Wooddale Edina campus. And she has over 1 million followers on her blog. And it started out several years ago. And I was telling Laura that my wife said when we got home, she said she kept using the term about the hamster wheel, being on the hamster wheel and getting back to the hamster wheel and what it takes to do that. And then the other interesting fact from that, she said all kinds of people try to start blogs or are involved in blogs and doing them. 0.1% continue on. Just because of the volume of doing that and what it takes to do that, but then also developing the crowd that comes. So it was just a fascinating evening together. And so on the 4 Sunday nights in April, we're having those sessions with different individuals who come and share with us afterwards. And so just great opportunities together. But Alicia Barinwald next week, what AI means for your work, family, and faith. And then in 2 weeks here, we're going to be on the 30th. Ray Williams and Dania Black are going to be with us. And the things they're going to be talking about, they're both counselors, and they're going to be talking about your brain on tech, how to stop your phone from owning you. And that's one of the things that Kyle mentioned in the message last week about, we own these phones, but do we own them or do they own us? And because they're with us all the time. And so just a couple of great events coming up, and then the evening sessions about that. I'd encourage you to come and be a part of that as well. But glad that you're here today. And our guest today is Laura Mulliken. And you may recognize that name because she is the better half of the Mulliken family. Todd Mulliken is one of the halves of that. And we know Todd from his time being here. And when I introduced him before, I said, Todd, I met you. Do you remember where? And he goes, no, I'm not quite sure. I'm sure it was here at Wooddale, right? I said, no, it was at a house on York Avenue the day our daughters were moving in the house. She goes, you are kidding me. And I said, I'll leave alone what I said about my Todd that day because he's not here to defend himself like he did so well last time. And we're similar in a whole lot of ways, and so it's always fun to have Todd here. But Laura works for an organization called Trafficking Justice. She's the executive director of Trafficking Justice, which is a nonprofit organization working to end sexual exploitation and sexual trafficking in Minnesota. And she's been involved with that for over 10 years. She's been here before and has spoken with us, and particularly about that topic. And Laura, we're so glad that you're back with us today. I look forward to what you're going to be sharing with us and then interacting about that as well. So let's welcome Laura Mulliken here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm guessing I need to continue to use the microphone for the film. Is that true? Okay. We are going to talk about this title that they gave me of Parenting Digital Natives Without Losing Your Mind. So just a quick couple things. My husband, Todd, and I absolutely adore Wooddale for many reasons. We have so many friends, so many connections here. I love so many of, especially the missional partners that you guys have here. Today, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit, just so you know where we're going, about how our world has changed We're going to talk a little bit about tech across the generations for littles, middles, and bigs. And we're going to talk about, just briefly, about some concerns around apps and tech for our kiddos. And then I also really want us to land on how we can foster good conversations with those kids and students who are in our life. So first, let's just consider how the world has changed. I think one of the things that is so dramatically different is that our world is wired now more to images than ever before. We used to learn with the written word, with books, with conversation. And now we get pictures for almost everything. And we have things like TikTok and its popularity, or Instagram, gaming platforms for kids. Those are all things that are driven visually more than they are driven by the written word. And we're also living in this world where the content is no longer long form as much as it's short form. It's getting shorter and shorter. And we're finding that that digital influence is increasing our lack of attention. So it's shortening our attention span for both adults and children. Does that make sense? So, and if you ask your grandkids or your kids kind of where they're getting their news source, even news has become entertainment. They're watching John Oliver at night, and that's where their primary news sources are gotten, or somebody like Trevor Noah. So some things don't change. Words are powerful, but images can be more powerful. And I want to just give you an example of this. If the slide works, we'll see. Come on. Okay. Let me tell you about my cousin's middle school daughter. She is a boss girl. She does not look anything like the rest of her family. She is athletic. She plays hockey. She just recently played like a little spotlight game for kids at a WNBA game out east. She is gonna rule a small portion of the world, I'm pretty sure. So you have Lucy in your head, right? Lucy actually looks like this. She is an adopted spina bifida kid from China who has overcome insurmountable odds. She is engaging, she is whip smart, but that's probably not the first thought that you had in your head. Whereas, if this is the first picture that you see of my sweet Lucy, you maybe have some preconceived notions about what her life is like if you were just to see a photo of her and not hear the story behind it. So I kind of want to know who's in the room today, who has littles, like babies through elementary in their households or their family. Ooh, not very many littles. We've got a new 8-month-old, so we're newly grandparents. And then who's got middles, like those middle school years, 6th grade through even up to maybe high school? Okay, oh, so we've got mostly bigs, like college and above? Yes? Wow, okay, well, this may change a little bit. For our littles, middles, and bigs, there are apps for absolutely everything. We're increasingly in this technological world where we use apps to optimize our sleep, to optimize our eating habits, to optimize our exercise habits. It's and it's central to our communication with friends. So I want us to actually look at the delineation, and we'll land here a little bit. The millennial generations, millennials, are actually kids who were born, adults, young adults, who were born between 1983 and 2000. That's where my girls all land. We have 3 adult daughters. So they grew up working in teams. They were all about collaboration when they were learning. And they're idealistic and optimistic for the most part. That is tending to be edged out a bit in the last 2 years, but more than the middles and the littles. They are also people who want to be recognized for their effort, for their achievement. There's some individuation in that, I would say. And these all come from Kara Powell, who I'm sure your youth staff uses all the time from the Fuller Youth Institute. They were the first to actually use multiple screens, and what's really important and different about them from those who are younger is that they migrated over their lifetime from no screens to screens. So they have probably a little more management or a little more perspective if they stop and reflect on how they use digital content, if that makes sense. So the next is middles, and that would be the centennial generation. So those who were born from 2001 to 2015. And Cara would say that that tagline is, I'm coping and I'm hoping. So they haven't lost hope yet. They're hopeful. They're engaged in social causes or justice issues. But they're also a bit cynical. They are coming to a point of recognition like, oh my goodness, we were raised with these screens and it was pretty much a big, unhinged, unfettered social experiment. And we're paying a price for that with our mental health. If you have read any of the work by Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation now a number of years ago, there are large studies coming out about how technology in the classroom has actually slowed and impeded our kids' learning processes. And these kids are coming to that realization themselves. They are globally savvy. The whole world is their oyster. It is not just Minnesota anymore. It is the whole world. And then for our littles, those ones who are coming up, born from 2017 to present, sorry about the typo, they are the first fully digital natives. If you think back to 2017, we began to see even infant toys or toddler toys have screens or technology with them. And we're seeing kind of the pendulum swing the other direction now, back to analog toys. We're coming back to wooden building blocks or magnetiles, or things that they can manipulate with their fingers and their hands, or that are simple machines that they can interact with versus the technology and the buttons. Many parents, upon recommendations of pediatricians, are going absolutely screen-free for their little children from the time that they're born up through toddlerhood. And that's kind of caused a divide as well because of friendships that you're connected with, right? We always used to say with our girls, they would say, well, so-and-so has such and such, and we would say, different families, different rules. You live in our house, these are our rules around technology. And they would roll their eyes. But they have never known a day, many of them, with a house that doesn't have Alexa listening in. Or you'll see little clips of kids who add things to the grocery list. They are tech savvy in sometimes scary ways. But I do want to remind us God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of self-control. So I never want to parent around digital issues or grandparent around digital issues from a place of fear. Rather, I want us to remember that technology in and of itself can be value neutral because, and it can reflect two good desires that God gave us. It can connect us. Technology can connect us across great divides, right? It also allows us to be creative in new ways. I'm not talking about AI. I'm talking about genuine creativity, not digital creativity. So how do we relate with technology across generations? School and homework for kids, increasingly, for a long time, COVID happened, and we put tech in everybody's homes. And that's where kids learned. We said, you know, be careful about making friends online, and then we put them all in classroom and said, make friends online. So it is, and there is also this, I think there's this wonder and fear around technology for many of us because it does things. I mean, just getting set up today, oh my goodness. If I didn't have help, you wouldn't be seeing the things on the screen. And are there ways that we can actually, like for many grandparents, I know that they FaceTime their grandkids. Or I talked to, my husband and I were in Vegas last week for the Frozen Four, the men's collegiate hockey tournament. And I was talking with a grandmother of one of the team players for Colorado. And she was telling me that she texts him before every game with a certain string and order of emojis and a little prayer before he plays every game. And that's a beautiful gift that wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago, right? So it can be a great thing to connect. It's also an opportunity for the kids or students, young adults, to be the teacher to us. What a gift that can be to express curiosity about the world that they're living in, and then turn the tables and have them teach you about the apps that they're using. So these are just a few of the many apps that are available. If you want to know something, what do we say? Google it, right? I mean, we all say that. We probably do it at least a few times a week. And now, one thing that you'll probably learn in this next AI iteration of things is people aren't even, Google has changed their format. So then unless you intentionally go to search results beyond the first page, you're getting mostly sponsored content after you first get an AI synopsis of whatever you're searching for. So we're getting, it feels like, oh, an expansion or easy, but we're also finding that we're getting less accurate information. And think about that with like faith spaces especially, right? You could get some pretty wacky stuff coming if we just Google it. We also have seen that phones, how many times does the average person pick up their phone a day, do you think? Wild guess. Oh, wow, that's a lot. 144 to 205 times. I check it for my phone, or just because I use it as my watch, right? I don't have a smartwatch. I just tip it to look and see what the time is, or what the date is, or what the temperature is. So we are also using technology in great uh, like a lot. And we're also wired to think I'm an adult, so it doesn't impact me as much, and we're more concerned, perhaps, about how it's impacting our kiddos in our lives, or we see our adult children interacting with it in ways that we think are more, and we're less apt to think critically about how much I am using my own technology. Does that make sense? It looks like that's resonating. So, what are we modeling? I think it's our job first to, especially, how many are grandparents in here? Okay. I'm going to do a parenthetical right now for those grandparents in the room. It is your first job to love your grandkids and to support your adult children in their parenting decisions. Tough? I think grandparents can be just this wonderful gift of protection and guidance and love. And we've raised our adult children to become adults, and they are the parents. If you think back, we had a couple of mothers in our marriage who were very opinionated about how we parented. And they were not shy at all about just letting us know what they thought or felt we should be doing without ever asking permission to share that with us. So we're very conscious of wanting to ask permission of our adult daughters before we weigh in on things. I just think it helps keep the lines of communication open and clear. You can also be able to show your grandkids or your kids how to handle disagreements online. You get to talk about things like who's in your digital circle, who gets to be have access to you through your phone. For many parents right now, one of the best tools for kids, if they've given their phone to their child, it's what I call a dumb phone through Gab or Bark or another kind of platform like that. So you can control, no internet on the phone, but you can control how many people are on their connectivity list with their kiddos. I also think if you can connect with your kiddo or your grandkiddo and show appropriate interactions online, there are people online who are not safe people. And it doesn't work for most of the world, it doesn't work to just unplug and go off the grid and live in the mountains of Idaho somewhere. It's just not practical for our banking or healthcare or anything else like that these days. And so to bring your kids or your grandkids along that digital journey and show them how to use tech responsibly is really helpful, I think. So there are some trends that are a little bit concerning. Again, I don't want to come at this from a place of fear, but I do recognize that kids that have access to tablets or phones, we spend a lot of time at high school hockey or high school lacrosse. And I cannot tell you how many times we've got a small sibling sitting in the stands and they are on a phone or a tablet the entire time. And it is heartbreaking sometimes to watch, like, it's time to go, or they're having a meltdown or something, but it's over their access or lack of access to that technology that's there. And so we're losing this capacity for personal interaction. I know a couple years ago, we went through a phase where a number of teenagers in our life, they had difficulty even making eye-to-eye contact. It was far more comfortable for them to be at our house and text us from another room than to come and have a conversation with me in the kitchen. And these are teens that I love dearly. They're not related to me, but it's so interesting how what started as convenience has also been altering how we interact, or our capacity to interact with others. And think about the loneliness there is in that. Can I ever feel really seen if you only know me through a screen? And God wants his children to be seen. We also have some risks that we just need to acknowledge. Social media has taken the world by storm, and adults are as likely to use it as kids, just not in the same amount of hours per week. And we are seeing that screen time and depression are absolutely linked, especially in middle school and high school and college students. We are also seeing that the biggest increase in those levels of depression and anxiety has been added to that list in the last 2 years, are 6 times more likely than boys to report those symptoms of depression. And 7 in 10 said Instagram made them feel worse about body image. So the thing that you're going to see, what should I be wearing, who's cute, who's in, who's out, is also making me feel like I'm coming up short on a pretty regular basis. We're also seeing social media and cyberbullying. I grew up with bullies in the school. I grew up in rural Minnesota, and we took a school bus every day with kindergartners through 12th graders on the same bus. Talk about bullying. It was a space that was ripe for bullying. And when I went home at night, I might think about the bully, but he didn't have access to me anymore. Now, kids come home, and they're sleeping with their phone in their room. That bully has access to them all day and all night. And so it feels like they can never escape. They never have these slices of freedom. Does that make sense? So I also think we need to be aware, again, not fearful, but aware. This is from 2022, this first statistic. The FBI said that there were over 750,000 predators online worldwide at any given moment. Just looking through apps, chat rooms, game applications for kids who are vulnerable to being targeted. And most of us know adults who have also been targeted online and fallen for schemes. And then we've also got this increasingly international set of bad actors who are going after particularly teenage boys. That's what I've seen the biggest rise in, is sextortion for financial gain of teenage boys. That grooming can take place. It used to be they would take a long time to identify a kid who had a vulnerability. Maybe there's someone who is a kid who's living with a lot of conflict in the home. Maybe there's untreated alcoholism or addiction. Maybe there's untreated mental health issues in the house. They don't have enough food, or they have unstable housing. And so they would kind of identify those things that the kid needs or wants in their life, and they would develop a friendship over time and get them to trust them, or meet some need. Maybe it's food or clothing. And they would take their time and then over time sexualize the relationship traffic them, sexually exploit them. I've met kids who have been exploited online from private, public Christian schools, homeschooled kids. So it really knows no boundaries. And I predominantly work with churched kids and churched families because of the circles that we live in and are connected to. And I also see now a change having taken place where it can happen so much faster. They've gotten, the predators, I will say, have gotten more savvy. And culture has also done this, done the kids no favor in that kids are now readily and easily pressured to send risque photos or inappropriate sexualized photos of themselves. And sometimes those very friends in school who pressure them, I was just talking with a friend the other day who had a 6th grade girl who was with her girlfriends, her 2 best friends, at a sleepover, and they were trying to encourage her to take a photo of her body at this sleepover, and you're beautiful, this is empowering. And so finally she caved and she did it. Then they turned on her and they said, okay, now we're gonna share this with everybody at school unless you do our homework for us. And she was exhausted because for nearly a year and a half, she was doing their homework and just finally couldn't do it anymore. And she went to an adult who interrupted the process. So I think for us, what makes kids vulnerable? I mean, if we look at this list, they're seeking love or acceptance. They want to fit in. If they feel misunderstood, if they're bored, if they don't have any boundaries, or sometimes they have too many boundaries, like mom and dad tell them everything that they need to think and do and say. If they're feeling insecure, if they're lonely, if they're curious, if they fought with their family or friends. Think of a middle school, high schooler, 20-year-old in your life. You know any who haven't experienced these? So we all experience these things. So I think all kids are vulnerable. I worked with a dad this week who was just like, we raised you right. He's talking about his 7th grade son who had been coerced into sending something that was inappropriate. And I think it terrified the dad that it was a boy. I think it terrified the dad that there's no way to know whether we're going to ever scrub these off of the internet or where they're landing. And it's so important for him. It was so important for him to recognize because he just kind of unloaded, which I can understand the emotional response. But I say to parents every week, you love your child. And right now, I know you're afraid of what is happening to your child. But your kid is hearing your fear as anger. Let's try to figure out how to make your love be louder than your fear. Let's figure out how to make your love for your child be louder than your fear. Let's celebrate the fact that your 7th grade son had the courage to come and disclose that he was feeling in trouble. Because when we react in fear, that shuts down the likelihood of further disclosure. And the kid gets deeper and deeper sunk into it. Does that make sense? So, better conversations. I think it's important. I grew up in a household that loved Jesus, you know, at the end of the day, Dad ruled the roost, but Mom kind of ran things day to day. And there was usually an assumption that we had done something wrong. And so questions about our behaviors or our thoughts or our reasoning were rarely conversations. Rather, they were interrogations to prove that we had fallen short somehow for my brother or I. So learning to have a conversation, a volley back and forth. If you've heard my husband talk, you've heard him talk about that for sure. Ask a question, get curious. Try to put yourself in the place of the other person. Have those kids teach you how to use tech that can connect you. How would you like to connect with me? Or what are ways that I can use tech that don't embarrass you to connect with you? And then be curious about what shows they're watching or who they find smart or entertaining, what music they're listening to, and learn about those things. Instead of being so concerned about downloading all the important information and wisdom I have at 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, rather be a student of my child or my grandchild. Yeah, and grandparents have this kind of unique place, unless we're, caregivers, guardians. I think we, unlike the parents, if we're in healthy parenting relationships where we're really parenting, not being best friends to our kids, we as grandparents kind of get to sidestep that boundary and be friends and mentors to our grandkids. And it can be a great gift to support your adult children in that. Ask questions about their friends, their feelings, their schools, their thoughts. Here's my number one tip for all parents. When you're doing pickup from school with all their friends or whatever, don't ask yes or no questions. Think through how to ask a question that is not able to be answered in yes or no. Like, what was the funniest thing that happened to you today? Or who did you have lunch with? And then be prepared with a follow-up, like, tell me about them. What makes them a good friend to you? But ask questions that are not yes or no answerable. And then to be a safe person and non-judgmental, forgiving, and ready to answer any questions. And that starts early and often, from the time they're little. Some of us have, that ship has sailed already in this room. And moving forward, to be able to have those conversations, younger the better, because it normalizes hard conversations or uncomfortable conversations. You can use engaging tools. I'll have access up on the screen for you later. And then keep up with current information and then ask questions like, hey, I heard you and your friends talking about TikTok. Can you show me how that works, or why do you like it? And, be curious. There are some ground rules that I would have around conversations about tech and online dangers. We have to put on our big girl or big boy pants and be the adults in the room. We have to be willing to have conversations that might make us feel a little uncomfortable or awkward. And just acknowledge, it's awkward for me, it's awkward for you, but it's important. Practice with a friend or a spouse. And then some of the kids that I've worked with who have been exploited online or have been in dangerous situations online have been threatened, about what to do or not to do online, instead of educated or had a conversation about who might be safe or not safe online. And that has put fear in the child. So when something does happen and someone approaches them online or sends them a direct message, they shut down instead of coming to you as a safe adult. And then things can go sideways. And then again, I'm going to come back. That conversation is a two-way conversation. It's not a speech. I remember when I was in late elementary, maybe middle school, but I think late elementary, the James Dobson series came out on the strong-willed child. Everybody remember that? And so we had the old film projectors on the big reels. And my Sunday school class got pulled out to sit in the sanctuary and watch it with the adult Sunday school. And we had a 15-minute car ride home from church. And every week, my brother and I sat in the back of the car, and my parents proceeded to tell me how I was the strong-willed child. There was never a volley, because mom and dad had the last word and the only word. And that really made me struggle with parts of who I am as a female leader in God's family for a lot of years. So it's not a speech, it's not a download of information, it should be a two-way conversation. I'm going to give you some tools, and then we can have questions. Firstly, with technology and kids, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, I cannot recommend enough. It's been around a long time. If you don't do long-form content anymore because you've become digital yourselves, follow him or Jean Twenge, Twenge, on X, formerly Twitter, or any social media platform. They've got great bite-sized articles. And then Taming the Technology Monster is written by Sissy Goff, who is married to Bob Goff, who you may know. And it's just a helpful view for kids. Other short books, I would say, The Tech-Wise Family, particularly. Safeguards is more for the protection from trafficking or exploitation, but The Tech-Wise Family, written by Andy Crouch and his daughter, are good. Those are good resources. Protect Young Eyes is a protective app that you can download, and that is also helpful for just filtering content that your kids get. And then finally, the Gab and the Bark are the two dumb phones I was talking about the kids really like. I also recently spoke for our moms group at CPC in Edina, and they have a number of moms groups who have all bonded together, and they've said, for our kids, they're not getting smartphones until whatever age they decide, 14 or 16. And it's so much easier to be a no-phone household when you're doing it together. I also have a friend whose nephew is part of a friend group of 9, and they love to play online games, and none of them have phones yet. I think they are 10 or 11 now. And the moms all got together and said, we don't want them sitting inside on these beautiful weekends as spring comes. And so they have limited their online time and set up timers on their computers for an hour and a half over the entire weekend, from Friday night through Sunday night. And none of the kids argue about it because they're all out playing basketball in the driveway or playing boot hockey or something, because they all have the same rule. So I would encourage parents to bond together and figure out rules together for friend groups, if that makes sense. And then this last one, Axis.org. It is a Christian organization that I think has some of the best materials out. You can follow them on any social media platform, but they have a weekly email that's not overwhelming, and they have resources on everything from what is TikTok all about, how does it work, how do I have a conversation with my kid about it, They watch current culture. They have a podcast that kind of takes current news articles or things that are happening in the world or things that are happening in the world of entertainment and kind of put it through a Christian lens. And then rather than kind of like do's and don'ts, they encourage you to train your kid to think wisely about decisions that they're making versus just prescriptive yes, no. But so I love it because it trains your kid to think critically if we can do a good job having those conversations. Make sense? Okay. So would you like to ask questions or would you like to do questions together? I've got questions we can use, or we can ask questions. They're all jumping at once, Dan.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Or we can do them.
Okay. How about if we, at our tables, or we can circle up, let's do, what's one encouragement or new learning you'll take away from this session or something that surprised you? And then let's do these two questions right there on the screen. What technology are you currently using to connect with your children and grandchildren? And then maybe share one benefit and one challenge you've experienced associated with technology in parenting or grandparenting. Thank you so much for having me here.